Okay, thank you so much, Melissa, for the introduction, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight for some poetry reading at the Red Wheelbarrow. I'll be reading something new, something old tonight. It's sort of a 50-50 mix of my new and old poems on screen share. I've also included two poems by two other SA poets, namely Diana Ferras and Mafika Gwala, because they seem to be in conversation with some of the poems that are adjacent to them on screen tonight. Without further ado, let me do the screen share and then we get started. Is it sharing? Can you see the screen share?
Yeah, it's started. Yes, we can see.
Okay. So the ones that are my poems will not have any author name, but Diana and Mafika's poems will have their name adjacent to the title. It's just two poems of theirs, one each. Far from home. Far from home. The monsoon Gautrain carries phantoms to work, shutters a night lock hanging from the sky's roof. Commuters are hard-boiled yolks inside the soundless bullet. Eyes melt Zelana's phone screen. It changes with landscapes. Her face molars, skirting the edge of a seat. Later, they froth out of the station's ears in a stillness only seen in underwater zones. Buildings reeking of deadlines suck them up, morph them into desk muffins. They prod the wagon westward, dragging the hours mounting its horns to get done, get paid, and start the cycle again the next day. Images on her phone are faster than the train. She video calls her father, realizes how cold her hands are, like those of a woman who's found love late. Dirty dishes do the fighting for her, forks sticking out, bowels squatting as she sinks the weight of her office clock into her sofa. In Matatiele, the dying sun warms the knob of her father's tobani, his palm gripping its scratchy wood to steady his frailness. A fedora hides the gray bush growing on his brows. As they video chat, dusk clings to his window frame, healing its crack. So it's interesting how this poem by Diana Ferras is sort of in conversation with the preceding one, the previous one, and the next one that's gonna come after it. I've come to take you home. By the way, Diana was graceful enough to give me permission to read her poem today and to also put it to share it on screen share. I'm really appreciative of that. I've come to take you home. Remember the veld, the lush green grass beneath the oak trees. The air is cool there and the sun does not burn. I have made your bed at the foot of the hill. Your blankets are covered in buchu and mint. The proteas stand in yellow and white, and the water in the stream chuckles, sings songs as it hobbles along over little stones. I have come to take you home, where the ancient mountains shout your name. I have made your bed at the foot of the hill. Your blankets are covered in buchu and mint. The proteas stand in yellow and white. Yellow shade. My door opens to the outside like the mouth of a woman waiting for a man who never arrives from the dust of a diamond pit. Lemons dangle from my tree like young breasts. The tree yields to birds. The sun hangs on top of branches, its yellow creeping through hissing leaves. Tired women in overalls perch under this yellow shade. Some have hair the hardness of little stones. Others' locks fray in the wind, fleeing their eyes. Stones are there for company too. Fish slice through water as shrubs shiver. Talk overflows, whispering the spirits of whoop up inside the chests of women whose skin is the shade of clay. Like soil, scent of their names is everywhere. Scattered magic. I once road tripped with a girl so crammed with confidence. Its powder butterflied through her ears, strummed nose on her guitar, and escaped my patched Datsun to wrap itself in the khaki warmth of the Karoo. At an engine garage, she entered the restroom and landed in another time zone, covered in Harvard and its pollen. Her master dress trailed by a man dripping with things from a Mediterranean yacht. Now my thoughts are swarming inside as I try to gather her scattered magic. But that's hard when you are me and peanut butter dance. Have you ever lived in a master dress? That's a newish poem that appeared in stanzas. I think all of the new poems that I'm gonna read today, they appeared in their post-book poems that all appeared in stanzas in different volumes. This is also a newish one. Friday date, charcoal on wood around a pencil, a laptop hissing as it shuts down, her blouse blowing as she exhales, cars rushing through the friskiness of Friday, a shower, a dress that glides, the dust of powder on cheeks, black coal along eyelids, lips dipped in raspberry sauce, a clutch bag clasped as gold dust rubs off, a scent bottle spritzing mist on her wrist, stilettos clicking on a driveway, the car revving into the belly of town, a napkin waiting on a waiter's arm, a cutlery of chatter, a ceiling of lights, the softness of leather on her men's shoes, the neatness of clipped nails on his hands, ruby evening poured into a wine glass, McCoy Mkubata's flute blowing the night away. Love on fire. I love a deep mama. His hair drips of mahab scents. I'm happiness on fire. My madness is trapped on his tongue. He does not break me like bread or fling me open like scissors. His chest, a cocoon of hairs, not that stone that sought my bones, not slippery like Galela's gumboots. My eyes claw on him as if sesame seeds on a bunny child. My my love sweats the kind of madness you smell in dogs on the run. My child, when you love in seconds like that, your heart will be shackled within an hour, twisting in the oven to die like soot, like Boulder Galela who got weary of the yellow you burned on his chest. Fires like yours flare up everywhere in these shacks, in Adib's Archer, in men so icy, they slide to the next house with rods writhing, bleeding feelings like yours. Your blasted heart will hover over pages of this township like the hunger we breathe to fill our guts. This one was inspired. I've got a friend in Israel, and then it was inspired by this picture of his. He was sitting like in Old Jerusalem. He actually lives in Old Jerusalem with all those old buildings and stuff like that. So I asked him for permission to actually write a poem about this, inspired by that picture of his. Love between dry countries. I loved a man from a place so dry, so porcelain cracked with pain. It smelled like ours. One windless day, he went looking for God inside the seed of a song, till what remained of his frame was a coat between wind-bloated tents. My heart broke on October stone as the moon melted in my coffee under a tree pregnant with grapes, in the land of the sickled moon, of David's star, between walls that refused to heal. I climbed the stairs of my head, found a trap throbbing like broth on my scalp, fleeing my pea life. My donkey's feelings seeped through its sun-split skin and landed on a cocoon wriggling with straws that fled stalks dying of Jerusalem thirst. I joined the trek, dress flipping, rubble of life round my ankles. At the frontier, a kettle hit a tarmac, Tanzanite untangled a rosary, tearing a prayer apart. The donkey stood still, as if splurged with mud. Saucers slid from sweat, from a hard life unbundling from its back, shattering its hooves. I crossed Luhamka, clutching only my dialect. I had this babe. I'll see you soon, babe. He'd murmured down my throat, straight to my pot, but babe never did. Maybe babe got broke, high, hungover, hustled hard, or maybe heavens have him. 70 days later, babe's shadows at my creaky door, shoking its way into silence. Babe, I missed you. This babe, this music of muscle glistening in sliding sweat of desire, wafting like real men in Zamdela at dusk. I once had this babe, this packed mountain of black diamond, dirty like coal, hurling his forgotten self in gumboots, trying to dig into my calabash of honey, like that hole of hell in Shaft 2 gold mine. One-way ticket. This is interesting because this poem was actually inspired by this township called Bochabela in Bloemfontein, where my dad was born and raised. Like that street called Nyokon Street. I don't know, I saw that street and then this poem just poured out. My goodness, I love it because it's got a lot of energy about it. It just flows, you know, it's quite something. One-way ticket. When he asks for me, tell him I'm under a silhouette of leaves to read a poem or two in my Midtown accent. I've dusted those raspberry boots that clasp the tightness of skin, a calf more sinewy than life, if you know what I mean. Even the blue in my bedroom senses what's about to unravel. Tell him I've gone to soften the hardness of words, there by the rust and second-hand tires. I'm shreds. He'll have to be loud to find me. I'm in poses like forensics and Vaihook. My petticoat sheds off rags. They lie on a sidewalk, defeated. That horizon across town is laced in my fragrance. Tell him the stove's gone cold. The plates have stopped clanking. My calf has slid into the stiletto sweat, the shade of blood. Yep, the one I blew my fortnight wages on. I'm taking a chance with the wind, for its flap seems to bet like this one-way economy ticket in my hand. Whiskey. Daughter streaks Marmite on butter soaking into a slice of bread, next to father's lager. Saturday sun reels round the rim of her collar glass. Outside, it is
Oh dear. Dimakatso, you've frozen for me. I don't know about everyone else.
Yeah, here too.
Okay. Maybe a network issue. Oh. Okay, let's give her a few minutes. She might be sorting it out, hopefully. She's just left the room. Hang tight, everyone.
I went offline a little bit there. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we're glad you're back.
Yeah, let me screen share again. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No problem.
Okay, let me repeat. Let me start whiskey again.
Perfect.
Whiskey. Daughter streaks Marmite on butter soaking into a slice of bread next to father's lager. Saturday sun reels round a rim of her collar. Outside, it is oven hot, sackcloth wrapped around a water bottle dripping under a tree. A firefly's arms stretch out in the airsec. Bright smoke bends around the hem of daughter's dress. Father's face is brandy mellow. It hasn't hardened yet. By midnight, he'll be dead after shooting whiskey with Sugarman, the two looking like oil lamps in the warm suburban night. It's 7 p.m. and father's about to spill into the evening heat. Inside the coil of change. Mother used to carry her baby son, soft as dough, in the fly-spitting rain towards a watering hole. I was the cool air running beside her. Her fingers dragged lines across the wall she plastered with her muddy hands. The steam of soup and sticky sweat remained trapped in its cracks. Now the village has vanished, with the kariki carrying stinkhold and the boy's whistle, as if lemon rind had split in half in the skin of milk. This mud of comfort is making way for coarse brick with windows so large, they swallow the daylight powdering into the living room. What's left are little shards of cups and glistening beads, sand-soaked inside the oxen, skulls at rest beneath the rusty wagons that litter the Free State veld. Old houses. They carry the sadness of burnt books, graffiti of laughter left behind in a haste of cramped boxes, fragile walls held together by rust on roof or sheer grace. Old houses, wood floating on a wafer of steel and change, always eager to absorb the next tenant's warmth. Old timer. My wife's memory wakes me from the hard-boiled egg of my bed. My heart still stuck to the boniness of my knee. I turn the bathroom tap on, it coughs, and memory slides out. My face looks like pain, a path that swallows itself into a burnt out candle, goes to bed with darkness, with hope, wakes up alone. Even death has fled me. My son's sons burst through the paper of my walls like a seven-pronged knife. Their music, an enamel dish on my red stoop, scraping soil. Looking for brassage. So this one is going to be in conversation with Mafika Gwala's poem, which is gonna follow next. Looking for brassage on payday. We live in our vastness, eyes yellow in haste towards #1 hostel. A typical day of tea, babies on breasts, warmth on winter walls. Sometimes pastors ball inside sweating tents, but not today. Men with cash pour from houses to hang with Majida at the hostel, that tomb of beds with blankets rolled like hay, hiding a spoon and some chipped cup and plate. Brassage was here just now, they say. He's everywhere and nowhere, between corridors cracking from music. Around the bend, air spits Mbaula sparks, as arms of a muscle of men flex. Bob Hamzalwan, Mahrotman cheer on, their cheeks parched like plastic drying in its own time. Men who've had to forget about the contours of a woman. Men nothing like brassage, with pockets checkered with cash. So the next one is by Mafika Gwala from from the book Mafika Pascal Gwala Collected Poems, edited by Mandlalanga and Ari Sitas. It's published by History Online. So I contacted Robert to ask for permission to do this, but then he said, no, I'm not the publisher, but I am the distributor. And then it was a struggle to find History Online to get permission to, to do a screen share. I didn't want to just read it. I wanted you to see how it looks on page. So I've chosen two of the stanzas from the poem. Actually, Speak Easy Brother looks like it's the original title, which sounds better than the latest title that says an attempt at communication. It seems too abstract and a bit dull, but I think Speak Easy Brother is, was a better title, the earlier one. Speak Easy Brother. There's a lively chick with a dainty smile. There's Auntie's cool mama look, lest we start some shindig. The spark tells me I'm not all screwed, yes, I'm booze feeding just. How it cool, right? We have the music blues to bury the dead blue in us. Give us a forward push, Africa rhythm. Start off and go, then you just happy. This one actually appeared in Avbo poetry. Yeah. Our aunt's grave. They buried her close to the riverbank. When the rains came, the stream's veins burst and dragged her mound towards the water's edge. Now her grave has fallen into itself as if a boat of mud. We had thought of moving her to the top of the hill, but the thought of hearing her brittle bones hitting the walls of her little home had been too much for this grief that was beginning to heal. So we washed the wet skin of the river's tongue, lick her grave, lick it again, with such mildness, it felt violent. With blankets heavy on our collarbones, our hearts dry as cayenne pepper, we left her there, soaking. First words. It was a place where dung was painted and polished and smelled like pot. I slid towards my peeling door, towards sunshine bursting with second chances. I smelled the dawn and the dust, the gutters and the dying dogs, the donkeys and the brewing beer, skomfana mfana. Then, with heaven in my hands, I began to write. This is the last of the selection for tonight. I want to live. I want to live where socks soak in the color of copper, where doors creak like skin ungluing from a night's sleep, as I look through a window dripping with rain that unties a knot jabbing my heart. I crave cocoa with cream and scones folded in butter, the road so far away that cars are a haze of ants trailing, harmless. I crave potatoes freckled with brown mud crumbling off their skin, warm and damp between my fingers, dug up from earth between my windowsill. I long for heaven, lest there's none above my head, in case it's hiding inside the memory of Malaysia the trafficker, as his combi's legs break down under stacked luggage, behind Bait Bridge thorns, far from the sea of a city housing people inside long rods of teeth, grinning in the blue vacuum of the sky. It's meat inside the glass yard of their minds. I hark back to the dampness of wood, feet dirty warm in a puddle that knows it will soon be mud, my heart unzipping to rain spitting as I sharpen a pencil to hear what charcoal tales it will tell. Okay, thank you so much for listening. That's it.
Oh, thank you. That was incredible. Does everyone want to unmute and clap for Dimakatso?
Can you return to a joint screen?
You want to stop sharing there so we can see your face?
I'm trying to remove the screen. Do I just do? What do I do? Do I just do this?
I think it's at the bottom. No, there we go. Perfect. You got it.
Okay, it's gone, eh? Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful. Oh, awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, and there's
Thanks
my
for
bird
listening.
shitting. All right. So thank you. That was really, really beautiful. It was so nice to hear a selection of old and new stuff, and also to have those other poets in between speaking with your work. I would love to open the floor up for questions. If anyone's got something they want to ask or add, you're welcome to raise a hand or wave at me or something, or pop it in the chat if you're shy. While people are deciding what they want to ask, I will start us off. What I love about your poems is how they are both grounded, but also like up in the clouds with images and just like beautiful, interesting word combinations and ways of describing stuff. So I'm curious about that side of things specifically. Is it something like coming up with these images and word combos, metaphors and so on? Does it come naturally or easy to you? Is it something you've always been able to do, or do you have tricks or tools that you've learned that you use to create these kind of things?
I think it's actually the way my brain is wired up, to be honest with you. I can't write a poem without imagery. Actually, an image is always what starts a poem and what ends it in the end. So I think in images, like I once told Gary, I think during an interview with him, that like even before I could read and write, when I was like 4 or 5, I would try to imagine how words look like, and I would think of them like in imagery. So I think it's something that comes naturally to me, but I think also like the influence of Setswana and Sesotho, like I speak both. My father was Motswana, my mother was Mosotho. I speak both quite fluently. And those languages are quite packed with imagery. That's how we speak. So maybe it's something of a bit of an unfair advantage in that regard, because I think that way, even one of my favorite poets is this young guy from Xwagxwa called Nolo Mufokeng. Like, his poems are dense like that. Mine are also dense, but the others are quite lucid and light. Like, for instance, like I started out light, and then I remember when my mom passed away, I couldn't write anymore. Like light poems like First Words and This Babe. I once had This Babe. I wrote them before this grief started overcoming me. And I was studying poetry at SA Writers College under Fiona Zebst. And then I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I can't write. I don't know what's going on. And she said to me, whatever it is you're experiencing, use it to channel, use it to channel it into your writing, so to speak. And that's when, to my surprise, some of my poetry became so dense in this imagery that was so packed like that, almost like a screen of a movie, which I found quite interesting because I hadn't been writing like that. And then as time went on, and because grief is just a matter of time for you to get over, I found myself going back to being lucid and light again. I remember Robert Berrot, who's both my editor for my book and my publisher, of course, said your poetry is interesting because it's a combination of dark and light. So it's a combination of things, of factors, to be honest with you.
Thank you. That was really fascinating. And I love the idea of the language, your roots being an influence, that it is just how you are. That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that gift with us in English so that we can also enjoy it. I have a hand up from Thandeka next.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Thandeka. Thank you so much, Dimakatso, for inviting me on this channel. It's my first time hearing poetry. I've never been in any session or sit down and listen to poetry or sit down or read anything, actually. But for me, I think this is much more enlightening in how you explain your journey in writing. For me, writing is actually, I always take it as something that's so deep. You need to sit down and find words. But I think your poetry actually revealed to me that it's much more easier. Well, not much more easier, but I see myself. There was one poem that had love with it. It just reminded me of being in Ladysmith, a place in KZN. It's a rural deep down in the northern parts of KZN. So I just saw myself walking down there and seeing all these things and the bunny chows that are there, all these sunflower seeds and everything. So for me, your writing just is simple. It looks simple and you actually just understand and relate to your writing. So I'm actually very, I don't know that it's much more beautiful to me. It's the first time. So I think I'll be joining you guys on your next sessions as well. Thank you, Dima.
Oh, Thandeka, thank you so much. Thanks for having come and thanks for that wonderful feedback.
Thank you, Thandeka, for joining us. I think this is the wonder of poetry, is when we can, it doesn't have to be over our heads and too complicated and deep and all that stuff we learned in school that we might not have enjoyed, but it's real, it's grounded, it's stuff that's happening to us that we can relate to. And I agree, this evening has been exactly that. So I hope you will join us again and get more into poetry. There's lots of this kind of accessible stuff available. Then I've got a question from Jacques next. And Jacques, you'll need to unmute yourself, and I also can't see you at the moment if you want to be seen. You're still muted.
Or perhaps send a text to say he must have, I should have unmute himself.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else who has a question? And Jacques, I'll come back to you once you've sorted yourself out.
Melissa?
Yes, Ed. Hi.
What I could do is go around to where Jacques is and just let him speak on this laptop.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool.
Just a minute.
It's even the traveling Zoom.
Indeed. Jacques, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just tune this off. Okay.
Hi, sir.
Hey, Jacques.
Hello.
Hello,
It's
Jack.
good. I can hear you. Dimakatso, that was a lovely reading. Thank you. And it was great to recognize some of my favorite poems. It was lovely. Thank you. So I have a question about the poem that features the Love on Fire. That poem really struck me tonight, and it's this kind of this precarious balance between what the mother knows about the dangerousness, the danger of loving too much and too hard, and what the daughter knows about this being on fire with love. I don't know if it's something you can say more about, because that poem is so wonderful for me, because it's so finely balanced between those two things. Maybe it's coming back to what you said about what Robert said about the dark and the light.
Okay. You know what's interesting about that poem? I had visited a friend of mine. I think it was in the East Rand. Was it Katlehong? Yes, I visited a friend of mine in Katlehong, and we were in this next to BP Garage, and then it's in a township, of course, and then there were these houses, you know. It didn't mean much at that time, but then later on, that imagery stuck to me, and then it inspired the poem, just like that. And then I've always been fascinated by those areas as well, like Western Sahara, the Sahrawi people, the Maghreb the Maghreb region, you know, places like Mali and and places like that that are above the Sahara, the Africa that's above the Sahara. So I just put that in as well. And then just like that, a poem comes out. Some of these poems are not necessarily introspective, but I'm able to sort of, I try to weave through the heart of a reader by making sure that, you know, the poem connects with the reader without explaining too much. I try to be accessible to the reader emotionally, but without explaining at all. So that's what I try to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's got anything to do with me. Of
Yes.
course, some of them have got something to do with me, like Whiskey. Really, my dad just went with Whiskey. Yes, it's a very personal poem. He died young at 52. He went to this party, and then he was a very popular guy. In his days, he was in a band, music band, very sociable, very friendly, very popular. And then in a house opposite ours, he went to this party, and then, you know, because people loved him, and then they gave him this bottle of whiskey. I don't know. Man, 2 days later, my dad had passed away. So some of these poems are quite personal, but that one you're talking about Love on Fire, no, it was just inspired. It's like a poem of a place, you know, it was inspired by that place in Katlehong Township in Ekurhuleni. Yeah.
And it haunts me because to me, it seems you don't take the mother's side and you don't take the daughter's side. It's these two different views of life, and the mother has the last word, but that being on fire with love there's something very attractive about that, obviously.
Yes, taking on different viewpoints. Yes, you're right. It's quite clear that these are two different characters, and, you know, even the mood and the tone when the daughter speaks is quite different from the mood and attitude, which is tone, to that of the mother. Yes, that's true. They are quite distinct. You can actually feel that there's this transition now that is happening in terms of tone, but also in terms of viewpoint and the speaker, the character of the speaker. You're quite right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for that discussion there. Is there anyone else who has a question for us tonight? Georgia.
Hi there. Dimakatso, that was just so amazing. I nearly sort of I nearly didn't I sort of don't really I don't know where to put the many things that are still swimming, many images and everything that's, you know, just quite overwhelmed me tonight with your reading. It's the first time I've found your poems and you, so I will be looking for more immediately. Absolutely wonderful. And I just, the two things that maybe will formulate a question is I adore the it's not hidden because it's really there, the humor that sort of is just underneath the word sometimes. And I mean, the classic example would be the peanut butter dents, you know, that description. And that really sat with me. And the other one, that please remind me, which was the poem that spoke, where you spoke about the path that swallowed itself.
Into a bent out candle. Oh, old timer.
Thank you.
Old timer.
Old timer. That's it. Old timer. Okay. And because I think I was so in it, and I'd love to read it again in time. But could you say more about that, the lines surrounding that line, the path that swallowed itself? Could you say a little bit more about that image and that? I'm curious about the. Sorry, I can't remember the line before that and the one after, but it was just it so struck me. It was such a there was a sort of a surprising something that happened there.
Okay. Do you mind if I open it? Because
I'd love you to open it.
Okay. Okay. My face looks like pain, a path that swallows itself into a burned out candle. Goes to bed with darkness, with hope, wakes up alone, even death has fled me. Yeah, it's really about the loneliness and difficulties of growing old, you know. We live in an ageist society, and people think when you're over a certain age, maybe over the age of 70, then you stop living. So I wrote that poem from that perspective, so to speak, and how younger people tend to disregard the rights of older people, so to speak. Yeah, that's what inspired that poem.
That's so interesting. Thank you. I really get it. Yeah, and I really get that layer now, and with the candle, etc. When you first read it, the feeling I had was of the path being still quite open, and you know, there's sort of a feeling of the unexpected. And then what you did was you left it hanging, and then just brought it into the image with the candle. And I just, yeah, that was the transition I was really interested in. Thank you so much for clarifying and for embroidering it for me, and yeah, letting me in there. I will. Where can I can, you have the book I can buy, Dimakatso? I can find your book?
Yes, I still have copies.
Books?
It's only 120 rands for a signed copy.
Great.
But in the stores, it's dead cheap. It's only 100 rands. I think,
Okay.
yeah, at Balkan Books, it's 100 rands. At Exclusive Books, it's priced at 104. It's ridiculously cheap.
I'll see what I can do. I'm in Europe, so I'll see what's possible. But that's great. Thank you so much. It's been very inspiring to hear you tonight.
Maybe Robert, my publisher, is here. Maybe he can explain about African collectives, African book collectives. Yeah, for those who are buying internationally.
There's a site called, if you go to African Books Collective, you'll find it online, and you can order either an ebook or a
perfect.
Printed copy. It'll be printed in Europe. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks again.
Okay. Thanks, Georgia. Thank you. Jack and Ed have got hands up.
Sorry, I'm
Melissa.
getting caught up here in the chat, telling people where to find your book. Ed, please go ahead.
Hey, Dimakatso.
Hi, Edward.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that it happened, and it finally happened after all this time. Yeah, that was an absolute treat. And the new work, the old work, it's all of a piece. I just found myself marveling at your ability to tell a story with imagery. That's simplistic, but it's really extraordinary. And yeah, in fact, when you were answering Jacques about the poem with the mother and the daughter, and you spoke about whiskey, the skill of the crafting is such that I think you'll take your reader with you, regardless of whether the context is more personal or not. And I love it that one has to infer from the details, that it's implied, that it's oblique. It actually lets the reader in. But yeah, and you spoke about your journey. I got some of your reply when I joined again, because I was going to ask you that as a question. See, nothing too challenging. so yeah, I loved it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Edward. Thank you so much, and thanks for having invited me.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, then Robert's popped his hand up.
Yeah, that was, thanks, Dimakatso. That was quite a reading. I mean, I'm struck by a number of things. I mean, I know these poems, most of them, but first of all, your ability to, as Ed was saying, like just to the other, to tell a story and to get other points of view, and not just points of view, into the heart of the other person or the different characters, and you very fearlessly pursue what they. I mean, there's very few poets who, I mean, you know, we're living in an age where people, you know, people just say what they feel about themselves, and that's as far as they go. And you are continuously looking outside of yourself and understanding how other people feel. And they follow them with these very powerful, you know, kind of original, strange images to kind of match their feelings or to find their feelings. It's a very powerful method. I just, you know, they're all stories. All these poems actually are little narratives. So I hope you carry on doing that, because you're really doing it very well.
Oh, thank you so much. But I think I also owe a lot to you, to be honest with you. I owe a lot to Robert, you know, all the mentoring and stuff like that. And Douglas, okay, is just is an editor for stanzas, but also he helped me a lot with also, like, you know, making my poetry more lucid, because he's an editor, but I think unconsciously or subconsciously he also mentors the writers who publish in stanzas. But more than anything, I think I grew in leaps and bounds through working with Robert. You know, he threw me into the deep end, and after the book was complete, you know, I had grown so much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I think it's also because of you, you know. I was a bit of a rough diamond, and I'm still growing still, you know. So I'm applying, you know, from all the people who continue to mentor me. I'm applying that knowledge that I've gained from them.
Well, may you never get too polished.
Oh man, that's lovely. Does anyone else have something to add or ask? I've put some info in the chat about where to find the book, as well as the ebook link for the international people, if you find that easiest. We've got quite a few first-time poetry attendees tonight, so thank you for bringing that into the room. That's really awesome to see people coming and discovering poetry through you. I think that's almost one of the most amazing gifts to give people, is that entrance into this wonderful world of poetry. I don't see any other hands. So if that is the case, then I think we're going to have to clap one more time. because this has been a really, really stimulating evening, both of your answers and hearing you chat about poems, and then also obviously hearing them. And go out and buy the book. It's called Yellow Shade, and watch out for whatever comes next in the Rough Diamond progressions. Let's clap.